Busy day and a half. Arrived from Washington yesterday and spent the day with General Lynch and his command team getting briefed up as to the overall mission set here at this great post, and then scurried about for the remainder of the day to see everything from chemical and biological, submarine activities to our Special Victims Unit training program to everything in between. So the challenging aspect of coming to a place like Fort Leonard Wood is you have so many different schools and activities. It's hard to take it all in, but it's been very invigorating. And of course, came out here this morning with General DeLuca and to see a bit of the Sapper School. And as you saw, we had a very brief conversation with those folks. They're obviously very mission focused. So this is my second visit. A little bit better weather than the last time I was here. We had a little tornado experience. So it's good to be back, and it's good to see the recovery effort and the cleanup and the rebuilding that's happened. A lot of damage, a lot of people's lives very heavily affected, and looks like they've come a long way. So I appreciate the chance to meet with all of you and try to respond to any questions you might have.
Mr. Secretary, what is, in your opinion, is the solution to training standards and regulations when it comes to women in ground combat roles?
Well, we're in a process now of establishing what we call gender neutral physical requirements for each job, but there are certain tasks that everybody has to do, man or woman, and we want to make sure that the physical standards that are appended to those don't take into consideration whether you're a man or woman, but rather can you do the job at hand. And I've talked to a lot of female and male soldiers, and by and large, overwhelmingly, they support that kind of approach. And if you look at the Sapper School, I think we've got pretty good validation of that approach. I mean, the women have been coming here and taking part in this program since '99. They pretty much have kept a single standard, and I think if you talk to the females who are here today, they don't want to be treated any more special or any differently. They want to be on an equal footing, and that's going to be our approach across the entire Army. And I think it's true to say that the Secretary of Defense and the President feel very strongly about that posture as well.
A lot of people came down here saying, or out here saying, that they do not want to see a drawdown in troops here. Are their voices making a difference in your mind?
Well, they had a terrific listening session here. About 1,200 people, as I understand it. And the Army likes to be where we're liked, so it's good to know that we have very supportive community behind us here. Frankly, that's not a surprise. We didn't discover that just at the listening session. It's been true, and I've heard it from commanders in my 4 years, and it goes back many years before that. This is a challenge that we are being called upon to face. Under the Budget Control Act, we'll have to come down as an Army to 490,000 troops, 60 to 70,000 fewer than we've had in recent years. So it's not a choice, and we're trying to do it in the most thoughtful way possible. We've been through the legal requirements of environmental analysis, et cetera, and although we weren't required under law, we thought it was important to go out into the communities and to give them the opportunity to weigh in. I can tell you from the higher perspective of the state, meaning statewide, I had a conversation last night with Governor Nixon, enormously supportive. I've had numerous contacts. In fact, I'll talk today to Senator Blunt, of course, Senator McCaskill, and Congresswoman Herschel. So you've got great support here. We appreciate that. These will be hard decisions, and they'll focus primarily on brigade combat teams. But there will have to be some changes in the structure and the placement of the support activities and the enablers, which you do have activity here, of course. So we're looking to make a decision probably in the first part of June and go from there.
Steve, do you have a question?
Yes, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the purpose of your visit today and what you plan to do with the information you've gathered here.
Well, I take a lot of briefings in Washington. I've got this beautiful round table in my office, but there's no substitute for coming out and seeing post camps and stations, and I try to do that as regularly as I can. As I mentioned, this is my second trip, and it's really just to stay in contact with soldiers. We have soldiers, a great many of them, great leaders in the Pentagon, but these are the folks that are answering the hard call of freedom every day, and I want to make sure we're taking care of them and they feel that the Army has their best interests at heart, and there's no better way to do that than to ask them. Also, it's important as we make resourcing and budget decisions, both in terms of the upcoming rebasing, but also just programmatically, to understand which places are doing what and how well they're doing it. That's one of the exciting things I think you find here at this post, and that, as I mentioned, a lot of very, very relevant, important things right now. Suburban activities, the great challenge that all the services, and certainly we in the Army, face with respect to sexual assault, just cutting edge approach to forensics and victim interviews, etc., that are being developed here. So it's a good time for me to be here, and it's a good place to be.
Andy, do you have a question? No? Sir, do you have a question?
Yeah, you were here right after the tornado a couple of years ago, and how you said you mentioned seeing some of the recovery. What's your impression? Because I've noticed obviously the eastern skyline of Fort Wood has changed dramatically.
Well, my impression is we're headed obviously in the right direction. The biggest memory I have from that last visit was the devastation along the residence area and the lives that were affected. That's been all cleaned out. New housing has taken its place, and I don't want to get poetic about it, but it's really a new beginning, and not just in terms of recovery here on base, but in terms of the lives that were so dramatically affected. So, you can never erase all of that damage, but I think that the leadership here has done a great job at least establishing a basis by which you can get a new start.
Daryl?
You mentioned the Special Victims Unit, and you mentioned some of the issues going on in Washington. It sounds like Fort Leonard Wood is the epicenter of training to deal with a lot of the stuff that you've been dealing with in the Washington media recently. Can you describe a little bit about the role of Fort Leonard Wood in sexual assault response training, and specifically with reference to the fact that a number of your people also work as sheriff's deputies and reserve police officers in the civilian world?
Which I found out yesterday. Another great reason why I travel. I wasn't aware we had that kind of synergy, and it's an interesting one. Well, I met with the cadre yesterday, and clearly the way in which they approach virtually everything, how you go through a crime scene, making sure you're asking the right questions, seeing the right things, to even more importantly, how you interview a victim, and understand the great emotional, likely physical, but certainly emotional stress and strain, how that affects behavior. So we're not turning our backs on victims because they're not saying what we think they should say, rather than what they're feeling and what their experiences are. So this is the way by which I think we have to chart our future. And we're working very hard to bring that into everything from investigation, interrogation, to our criminal system, so we can do a better job. The Army statistics have gotten a little better, but a little better is not good enough. This has to be a zero tolerance environment. It has to be one where every alleged victim has every possible right to recovery and to justice, and it has to be a place where people who commit these acts are simply not tolerated. We're doing better, but we, as I think the discussion in recent days has shown appropriately, have a long, long way to go, and we're committed to that and working on it every day, and a big part of that's happening right here.
Okay, last question, Ann.
With proposed legislation expected next week, do you think all or a portion of military justice should come out of the equation?
Well, we in the Army, we strongly support a revision to what's known as Article 60, which was the provision of the Uniform Code of Military Justice that allowed recently an Air Force commander to throw out the conviction of one of his officers based on, as I understand it, a unanimous jury finding. The Secretary of Defense has committed, and we support taking that sole authority to ignore the findings of a jury trial and a jury away from a single commander. As to the other aspects of the UCMJ, we want to do things not just as well, but as effectively as we can. And as I testified before Congress this week, we're open to suggestions. Now, part of the legislation that has already been passed has the call for the creation of a panel appointed both congressionally and from the department to look at these matters, to make sure that whatever we do, it's the best possible solution. I mean, there's a lot of great ideas and good intentions out there, but this is the bedrock of good order and discipline in the United States military. So if we're going to make wholesale changes, I think it's important and serves all of us to make sure we understand the effects and make the best judgments. I think this outside panel that was created under law will help us to make that kind of step and make those better decisions.
That's all the time we have, sir.
Okay.